A critical moment, because on that day I was climbing onto the tanks like a good journalist, and I noticed that what was happening is that the crews, the officers, you know, in the turret, were pulling off their headsets and using their mobile phones. I thought, why would they be using their mobile phones when they're about to appear to invade the square? And I had 3 good Egyptian friends who have colleagues in the army, members of family in the army, who said they were calling their homes to ask their families what they should do. Should they go into the square or not? Because, of course, military families on the officer corps in the Egyptian army, like most others, members of the family, the father had been in the army, there were colonels and uncles who were colonels and so on, and they were all being told by their families, you do not touch an Egyptian. I don't think they would have done, but I think that was a very critical few seconds when all those headsets came off and all those mobile phones started getting used. One more from Channel 1 again, yes? Question is, no, please, not the Turkish model. And even more, not the Pakistani model. Have you got any other suggestions? I can't hear it. Saudi Arabia, for example. No. Well, we've got to do a critical mass there. Please don't mark yourself on anyone but Egypt. You know, there is one thing, by the way, I'm amazed that in the age of, al-Arabiya Wahada, in the age when, it's only 100 years since, or less than that, since Mr. Sykes and Mr. Pico decided to chop you all up into little bits so they could eat you. I'm amazed that all the revolutions have stayed national. No Tunisian soldiers rushed to help the Libyans. No Egyptians are pouring in to help the Syrians. No Turks have actually crossed the border. Don't hold your breath, by the way. Look, the Turkish model, go to Turkey for a week, or 2 maybe. The terrible problems with the Kurds are far from being solved. There is great racism in southeastern Turkey, around the Diyarbakir area. They have still not acknowledged the facts of history. I'm talking about the Armenian genocide. 1.5 million Armenians die in 1915, and we're supposed to say that it is hotly disputed. We wouldn't accept that over the Palestinians of 48 and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. How do we tolerate the Turks refusing to accept? If they join the EU, they will have to accept. And if they're wise, they'll accept the Armenian genocide as a fact of history before the 100th anniversary in 2015, when they're going to have a lot of problems. Oddly enough, on this subject, I went to Istanbul because the Turkish edition of this book was being launched, and it's got the full Armenian genocide chapter called The First Genocide in Turkish. And I thought it was going to be a fairly tough time. I had 23 interviews. I did have one pretty bad battle. But interestingly enough, on the second day of book signing, a young man came and said, my father saw you on television last night and would like you to sign the book for him. I said, oh yes, what's your dad do? He said, he's the police chief of Istanbul. And that was quite remarkable. I did get the feeling that they might start to move on that. Many Turks are discovering they have Armenian grandmothers. Why, I wonder? So you've got that, and you've also got the whole problem of justice. The Hrant Dink murder, the murder of the Armenian Turkish journalist 2 years ago, the court case is a scandal. And indeed, the father of one of those blamed for the killing said that he was telephoned by senior officials in Trabzon congratulating him on his son's brilliant work for Turkey by killing Hrant Dink. So I don't think you should really import the Turkish model just yet. In credit to Erdogan, he was the first person who realized the significance of the Arab awakening. And I never believed I'd see the Ottoman flag over Beirut and Gaza and Egypt, but absolutely almost the Ottoman flag. Absolutely incredible. He did it. And he came out way in front of the Obamas and certainly in front of the Putins and Medvedevs, and certainly in front of our own beloved David Cameron. So, give him credit, but not Turkey. And Pakistan, please, Pakistan, do I need to go on? I go to Pakistan twice a year at least. I like going to Pakistan, but it's a total mess, man. I don't think you should have, look, the only role model for Egypt is Egypt. Don't take Britain's advice, because we've been giving that to you, as I say, for 180 years. But you have to solve that. Don't look around for role models, because it'll always screw you up. Gentlemen, our lady first. Just in America, if you take 3 questions from men and none from women, they start shouting at you. Not so much gender equality in Cairo yet. Go ahead.
2 questions, please. First one, you said in your recent article that elections in Egypt might become too good to be true. Democracy. why you say that? And the second question, what's the difference between the Islamic parties in Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt?
I haven't been to Morocco for years. That's one bit. Wait for the revolution, I might get there quickly. At the beginning of this year, you know, all I was doing was clocking out freaking flyer miles. I was going from Egypt to Beirut to Bahrain to Libya. It was incredible. The speed of it was amazing. Anyway, look, when I said democracy is too good to be true, it's that when revolutions achieve their initial aim, get rid of the dictator, right? There's this effusion of joy. We've got it! Democracy is on the way. And the first thing that happens to revolutions is the revolutionaries get betrayed. Russian Revolution, 1917. You might be in the Menshevik stage at the moment. I'm saying that with a certain amount of seriousness. French Revolution was great. William Wordsworth. Bliss was in that dawn to be alive. I actually used that in a story this morning's paper. But very shortly afterwards, Wordsworth decided he didn't like Monsieur Danton and Monsieur Robespierre, you see. It's not going to happen in Egypt, I know, but I think that looking back on the actual revolution, this is why I wrote that. I remember having lots of arguments with people, not just in Tahrir, but up by the Parliament building, you know, there's people, millions spread. We just want Mubarak to go, we just want Mubarak to go. And I kept saying, but hold on. Mubarak's just one man. The system is there. It's not going to disappear. These, like in this, I had the Syrians in Lebanon where I've lived for 35 years. I've watched the system. You can chop off bits of it, but it's a hydra head. It stays. And there was a lot of discussion towards the end of the 18 days that in some way Tahrir, or the revolutionaries, or the Yam, or whatever you like to call them, should elect representatives for all the cities of Egypt. And these people were regarded largely as being too aggressive, rather suspiciously. What were they trying to set up here? We've got rid of Mubarak, what more do you want? Looking back, and I had this discussion last night with Ala Aswani, they were wrong. They should have had some kind of elected representatives. I mean, I know at the time the beauty of the revolution was there weren't any leaders, so the Mohabbarat didn't know who to arrest. That was good. But once the revolution had established itself as a fact, there were still no leaders. And then we saw all these various people popping up on television, some of whom we'd never seen before, some of whom were faintly familiar. And that is where the railway train went onto the branch line, I fear. It doesn't mean it can't come back again. You can always back it up and run it down the track. And it may be that tomorrow, if there are huge numbers in Tahrir Square, and if the elections haven't become a substitute for the revolution, or if they haven't become a substitute for Tahrir, I may have to take all this back. But all revolutions go off the rails very shortly after the dictator goes. And it doesn't matter if you look forward, I mean, look at Gaddafi. By the way, I wouldn't want Libya to be a role model either, by the way. I think that you've got to be constantly aware the revolution in each of these countries, including Egypt, has not ended and will not end and may not end in your lifetime. We journalists love everything to finish by Christmas so we can concentrate next year on global warming, Burmese independence, democracy, whatever. It's not going to be like that, and they're all working at different speeds. But I think that I think Egypt is safe in a lot of other countries because it's got history. It has a civilization. The problem with Libya is it never was a country. Well, even Mussolini chopped it into two, had Tripoli and Cyrenaica, and we know the history. One of the things when I was in Istanbul earlier this year, there was a new biography came out of Ataturk, which I've actually quoted to various people, including the Emir of Qatar. He wrote a letter. Ataturk's first military operation was he was sent to Libya to train the Senussi tribes in guerrilla warfare to attack the Italians in Benghazi. He was in Brega and places like this. In 1911, exactly 100 years ago, he wrote a letter to one of his comrades in the Ottoman army in Bosnia. Bosnia-Herzegovina was in, of course, the Ottoman Empire. And he said, this war in Libya, we didn't say Libya, he said Cyrenaica, is hopeless and useless. He said, the Senussi, the same Senussi as now, they fight well, but they want the war to go on for a very long time because they want lots and lots of money. And I wondered if anyone had ever given this to Obama, or this was a quote, or to Sarkozy, or to Berlusconi, etc., etc. Anyway, let's move to your second question. Inevitably, when you've had dictatorships, the parties that are better organized will always be Islamic by nature. I don't say Islamist, I say Islamic. And the reason is that because they had to exist under